I want to do a section on training, and we're actually in a house right now because I want to show you 3 things that you can do at home that from a beginner level to advanced to World Cup riders, they all work on these fundamentals. So I'm here with Jared Kolick. He has been my trainer. He is very humble, but he is one of the best in the entire world. He's trained some incredible athletes, from Supercross winners to World Cup podium riders. Jared, tell me a little bit about your background.
All right, so I raced BMX for 16 years. I did it for 7 years professionally. After that, I finished my degree in kinesiology and been fortunate enough, as Elliot mentioned, to work, with guys like Elliot, Chad Reed, Blake Baggett, Bernard Curnow, and Lucas Shaw. So it's been a wild ride so far, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
What's the biggest difference between what you would do normally in the gym versus, a top tier athlete?
It's really nothing different. I'm gonna treat my general clients just as my pro athletes, except the pro athletes, their volume is a lot greater, and they know how to, take the intensity. So it's just more work, which also means I need to focus on, their biomechanics more and their positioning, because they're taking their bodies through such bigger ranges of motion. They're taking big crashes. So I quickly knew I needed to also learn how to control, crashes, control their history basically. So, most of them are coming in and these sports aren't for the faint of heart. So they've had a lot of injuries. So we got to deal with that. So on top of getting performance out of them, I also need to, help them and teach them about, proper movement patterns and things that will, help them live a long, healthy life, but it'll also help their performance because they're just going to be, working much more efficiently.
Totally. So Jared, you mentioned biomechanics. What does that mean? When I think of that, I think of, I don't know, something mechanical, and then maybe some movement, and then I guess me.
Yeah.
But what does that mean in, in terms of the bike?
Yeah, so I think almost like thinking of suspension, there's 2 key words here that just spark when you say biomechanics, and it's kinematics, which is the description of motion, and then kinetics, which is the forces that are creating motion. So essentially, we have muscles connecting to bone that contract and move us. So I want to make sure, in whatever my athletes are doing, whether it's on the bike or in the gym, that they're producing and absorbing forces properly. So that would just be what you'd hear is squat with your legs, or bend over with your legs, not your back. Lift something with your legs, not your back. And then once we get that down, it is all about, just making them stronger in that position, which then means that they're going to be able to produce, more force, and then we're going to add speed to it, which means, they're going to become more powerful, which then let's translate that to the bike with, sprint work and interval work. And then they're on the track, 2 minutes down on the run, they still feel, 90, 95%, and that they can keep going. So I try to help them get down the mountain safer, as well as perform, at their peak.
And so in the gym, you talk about injury prevention, maybe in a couple words, what do you mean injury prevention? Does that mean when I crash, I have more muscles, to keep my bones from breaking?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. With the moto and the mountain bike guys, which is mainly my athletes, it's putting on a little bit of muscle is good for protection as well. But like I said, an athlete could overjump something or mistime something, and actually there's going to be a bigger compression because of that. But because of their training and moving more efficiently, they can actually absorb it and save themselves from maybe having a big get off.
Yeah, I feel everyone kind of knows that feeling when you go through a compression and you chest goes to the bars, and if I'm in shape, maybe I can do that push-up, but if I'm not, then that's me over the bars.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
would you train, are there exercises specifically for that? Because I feel when I was first starting, I thought like I should just do a bunch of push-ups. Like, what is the difference between a correct exercise and just like doing a push-up or doing a deadlift, or like why couldn't I just do a bunch of pull-ups to work up my arms and get that strength?
Yeah, so that's pretty heavy question. But essentially, I look at it as, we came from like quadruped, so we came from like being on all fours to now on 2 feet. That changed everything, the way our body is dealing, with gravity. So I'm going to basically take an athlete back down to the ground, figure out where their weaknesses are, figure out where, their body actually feels a little stressed.
So I feel like everyone has kind of had that moment where you're trying to save something, like doing a push-up into the bar, and if you're strong enough, you can save it. But right now, I feel like I would kind of go over the bar. So I would think about just, especially when I first started, just doing a bunch of push-ups. But we worked on a bunch more stuff along with the push-up. What are some of the things that people could think about doing that exercise in their home, trying to get more out of a simple exercise?
Yeah, so using the push-up, as Elliot mentioned, for an example, is a lot of times people, they're starting here and their shoulders are already coming together and their lower back has like a big deep curve in it. By simply just telling them to just try to scoop the pelvis and then push away from the ground, they probably don't realize it, but they just engaged their abdominal walls so much more. And then from that, if they do a push-up, they're gonna feel way more connected from their upper and lower body. And then you're just gonna transfer that to the pedals in the handlebar or from the foot pegs in the handlebar.
And so it's really like thinking about these exercises that are like, I think of a push-up working on my arms, but then like you're saying tighten the core, tuck
help
the
them
hips.
help them find it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Help them find it.
On the bike, it's all the same, right? Like when I'm riding, I can't be like a noodle coming down. Like I want to have that same hip tuck on the bike, that attack position.
Yeah, and you're not, I remember with you, it's like, don't think about that while you're riding. Like that's what the gym's for.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't have to be riding in that, position necessarily, but it's like when the time comes and you have to react, right? Because we're a reactive mechanism. As soon as you have to react to it, you got it.
Yeah.
And it's just natural. You don't even have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's one of the things too, is like that people end up working. I mean, I'm super guilty of this, is like working out things that you can get on the bike. Like a lot of people think about working out the legs, but you're kind of saying, what are the things I can get on the bike? Do that on the bike. And then in the gym, kind of focus on the things that I maybe can't get on the bike.
Exactly. So it's all about just countering. So I'm going to, I'm not going to really find that on the bicycle. I'm just going to find it in the gym. I'm going to put you on a table and I'm going to see what your body can and cannot do.
And so what are some of the things that I would, like a typical bike rider would need to counter? Like what would I need to counter, and how could I?
The biggest thing, hands down, is almost every rider I ever have gotten to work with, they're just super hyperextended. So they're way deep into their back. Their shoulder blades are always kind of, in this passive position where they're like coming together. So I look at it as like they're already in a compressed state, but instead of being compressed in their front side, they're compressed in their back.
And so is that just like the way that I counteract that? Is like just with that push-up? Could I do that with the push-up?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Like no exercise is wrong. It's just like the little tweak. So in that push-up example, getting the pelvis under you, the upper hamstring is what's allowing that to occur. And then that extra little push away from the ground is just getting the deeper abs, not the six pack, but the ones that actually integrate the rib cage and the pelvis together. And that creates that stability that you're looking for.
Yeah. What is like the biggest mistake like that you see? You train a ton of cyclists, and like from beginners to World Cup winners. What is the simplest thing that people out there could fix like right away, like today, in the gym maybe?
I think the biggest thing is understanding that their core, the deepest core muscles are exhalator muscles. And if you are not incorporating your breath with your ab work, you're not getting the most out of that. And you got to remember that you're transmitting force from the center of your body out to your limbs. So if you're not incorporating the breath, you're already at a loss.
And so like, is that just, like if I'm pushing up, is that just a in and then out? Or like, what do you mean by
So at the
incorporating the breath?
at the top of your push-up, you take a nice breath in, and with that pelvis position and rib cage position, your lungs will expand, 360 degrees, and you will feel a compression in your abdominal wall. From that, you'll drop down, and then as you push up, you'll blow all the air out, and it'll just be like this punch to the core, and the power will just transmit throughout the rest of the body. So not only, you should automatically feel a little bit more stable and stronger in that push-up, but you're probably gonna add a little more speed to it as well.
Yeah, and
It's not a power leak, they would say. You're taking the power leaks out of the equation.
Right, and it's fascinating, and I remember this like over all the years that we worked together, it was all about the core. Like I think we all think of cycling as being like such a leg sport, but like you were mentioning the power leak of, if I'm a noodle here and hyperextended, then my legs are actually gonna be less powerful.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna lose the glutes and the hamstrings, and then just be more, quad dominant, and it just feeds that forward pelvic position, which draws you deeper into your back. So the biggest thing is the core is not just your abs. I treat the body as one system, and the core is just the whole thing. Because if you lose that, like I said, you're just not going to transmit throughout the rest of the body.
I remember one of the things that you taught me, especially when we were starting, is like being in the gym with bad form can a bunch of the time like do more harm than good. And so like, what do you kind of mean by that?
Yeah, so essentially, we'll keep going with this back, this heavy back extension example. Every rider, most moto guys are doing some form of a squat. So, somebody that's already in a position like this, if they throw a bar on their back, it's just gonna exaggerate that more. So, they're gonna maybe go into a back squat, and instead of sitting straight down, they're just gonna come back and bend the knees, and like, they're gonna do like a half squat, half deadlift position, and they're just feeding like the bad pattern. So an easy way to fix that would just be to throw the bar onto the front of them into a front squat. We're here or here. And then it'll make the athlete have to create they're gonna feel these ab muscles that we're talking about, and they're gonna be more upright, and they're gonna sit into their hips more. And then it's just the practice of, it's just practicing it to get deeper. Like it's gonna feel very weird at first, but we're gonna do everything we can from the ground up to make that feel a lot more normal.
Yeah, and so it's like actually what you were saying, like instead of feeding the bad patterns, you're actually trying to counteract the bad patterns. So getting out of that hyperextension, maybe doing a front squat and actually working the muscles that you're trying to work rather than, actually working your back and maybe injuring your back.
Exactly, and it's all about just using as little cues as possible for them to learn about their own body. Because I could just sit there and talk, but their brain is not going to take in this new information and feel these different parts of their feet, for instance, in the squat. And that's super important to me because that's the only way it's going to translate onto their bike.